Hey, what's going on everybody? My name is Jonathan Fuentes, and this is my YouTube channel that's dedicated to clearing up common Christian misconceptions. Today, I'm actually going to start a new series on my channel. I came across an article called 22 Questions for Christians, and to my surprise, there were actually some really good questions on here. A lot of questions that I feel that many Christians have never heard before or have never really even thought about before, which is why I wanted to do this series on my channel. Now, some of these questions are actually more complex than others, but just as always, I'm going to break down these questions and simplify them so that this can be a good starting point if you want to do more research and dive deeper into these questions in the future. One last thing before we start is, I'm actually going to skip question number 1 for now, only because it has to do with the Bible and how we can trust it as Christians, and I already have like 2 or 3 videos already talking about that on my channel. I do plan to come up to it later, but with new information and attack it from a different point of view. I will leave a link to the article down below if you want to read it for yourself. I'm not going to read all of the question, but essentially it goes like this, and it's a 2-parter. In the Bible, in the Garden of Eden, if the tree of knowledge contained the knowledge of good and evil and right and wrong, then how could Adam and Eve have known that it was wrong to disobey God? And the second question is, why did God even put the tree there in the first place? Why didn't he put it on the other side of the world? The story of Adam and Eve can actually be found in Genesis 3, and this is where we will be going to get our information. Okay, so the first part I want to clear up about the question is actually the part that the author added in order to be able to make his point in the first place. The Bible calls the tree of knowledge of good and evil, not the tree of knowledge of right and wrong. The author needs it to be the second one in order to make his second point of how could Adam have known that it was wrong to disobey God. Now, I'm not saying that he did this on purpose, but it's important to note that many skeptics will do this in order to make their point, and it's important for us as Christians to be able to notice it and to be able to call them out as well. The second point is this: did Adam have absolutely no knowledge of good and evil? Well, he must have, because in God's commandment he says this: "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die." If we're going to take the assumption that Adam had absolutely no knowledge of good and evil, then how could Adam have known that it would have been bad to die, or that it would have been good to keep on living? I think a clear example of this can be found in 1 Kings 3:9, where King Solomon prayed to God saying this: "Give your servant therefore an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil." And God is pleased with his request and he gives it to him. The events of King Solomon take place long after Adam and Eve eat of the fruit, which means, according to a basic understanding of the text, King Solomon should have already had the knowledge of good and evil. This is why it's reasonable to say that the tree of knowledge of good and evil is for a deeper understanding of good and evil, not a basic one. So going back to the question, how did Adam and Eve know that it was wrong to disobey God? Well, that's because they did have a basic understanding of good and evil. Now for the second question: why did God even put the tree there in the first place? To be honest, before a few months ago, I had never even thought about this question. But upon hearing the answer, it made so much more sense to me. Now, I've touched this idea before in a previous video, but the idea goes like this: God created us with free will, and God gave us free will so that we could freely choose to love him and not be programmed to love him. One example that I gave is, imagine if you had to choose between a spouse who freely loved you or a spouse that was programmed to love you. Which would you choose? So in order for Adam and Eve to truly show God that they loved him, there had to be some sort of option in order to disobey God in the first place. And by freely choosing to not disobey him is where they put their love into action. One analogy that I came up with in order to better understand this was, imagine that you're a parent and you have a teen that can drive. Now usually you stay up late to make sure that they don't sneak out and take the car. But one night you just have to go to sleep early, so you go to your teen and say, "Look, I have to go to sleep early, please don't take the car and sneak out." Now you're left with 2 scenarios. Right after saying that to your teen, you take the keys to the car and you lock them up in your room in a safe. You also take the car, you park it in the garage, you disable the garage door, you also remove the tires, also lock them up in your room, you remove the engine of the car and you also lock that up in your room, and then you barricade the door so that way so nobody can get in. And then the morning comes. Would it really make too much sense to go to your teen, see that he didn't take the car, and say, "Wow, thank you for obeying me. Now I know that you truly love me"? No, because in this scenario, you didn't even give him the option to disobey you. You did almost everything in your power to be able to prevent any sort of disobeying from this teenager. A better scenario would be that you, after telling your teen not to sneak out, you leave the keys right there on the table, you go to sleep, you wake up in the morning knowing that your teenager had every chance to disobey you, but chose not to. Now when you go up to them and tell them, thank you for not disobeying me, thank you for showing me that you love and that you respect me, how much more does it mean given that they actually had the free chance, the free choice to disobey? It's the same thing with the tree of knowledge. Without the tree of knowledge being in the garden, there was no way for Adam and Eve to be able to disobey God, which means that they wouldn't be able to freely choose to love God and to respect and to honor Him. As far as for putting the tree on the other side of the world, it's the same concept. God gave them a whole garden of trees that they could eat from, but only one that they couldn't. Anyways guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said, this video was just a simplified answer of the question. I still think it answers the question, but there's obviously a lot more that we could talk about in order to fully understand and comprehend why these things happened. If you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and also subscribe. And don't forget to leave any comments of any other misconceptions you guys have heard. Anyways guys, once again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Take care and God bless.